Devils Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Nick Villano of pucksandpitchforks.com. Yes, that editor-in-chief that just gets you the latest news, the latest opinions of all things New Jersey Devils. Streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, X Live, and Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network as the new season is kind of on us after the Florida Panthers win the Stanley Cup last night, 2 in a row, back-to-back, which is very difficult to do. Over the Edmonton Oilers again. Lots to talk about. Are the Devils making room? Are they going to make some space?
That's exactly what they're doing.
Look, Tom Fitzgerald, Nick, is not wasting any time. You know, actions speak louder than words. He roared like a lion on that presser at the end of the season, the state of the team, and we knew changes were going to be made, and this was the first step today when he traded Erik Haula to the Nashville Predators.
So there's a lot of different directions I want to go into. The first one I want to go into, well, first let's talk about the trade. So he traded Haula to the Nashville Predators. Predators finally doing us a solid after ragdolling us 2 straight years in trade negotiations. First at UC Saros 2 years ago, and then this past season with Ryan O'Reilly. Just completely spitting in our face, basically. But finally doing us a solid, trading for Erik Haula. They send their own 4th-round pick, which is basically, like, it's close to a 3rd-round pick, right? They're picking, like, what, 4th? 4th or 5th? No, Utah's 4th.
Yeah, it's a 4th
right.
round
Do you remember
pick.
what position they're in? Are they in, like, the 5th pick or the 6th pick? They're up there.
Of the 4th round?
Right. Where are they picking in the 1st round? The 6th?
I didn't go in that depth.
They have a bad record. So that's, yeah. So it's a high pick in the 4th round. It's still a 4th-round pick. Not very likely that it's going to turn into an NHL player, but it's happened before. I think Sharon Govich was or he might have been a 5th-round pitch. But anyway, and they traded for a defenseman that you don't need to know his name. No offense to the guy, but he's a guy who played in the ECHL last year. He's at best a 6th AHL defenseman, but I think that there's not really a lot of seeing. He's a former 6th-round pick. I think he was a Colorado Avalanche draft pick. Just fodder, right? It's just kind of like extra guys you get thrown in there. The big deal here is the Devils are now up to like $14.3 million they could spend this offseason. A couple thoughts here. Obviously, you know, the extra like $2.5 million or whatever it ends up being just with the calculation is huge. Especially if you want to sign Luke Hughes long term. Like say like just to give a round number, let's say Luke Hughes signs for $8.2 million over 8 years, and now you're sitting with $6 million you're sitting with $6 million left. But prior to this deal, it was 4. 4 means you can't upgrade anywhere. 6 means you can at least do like one upgrade somewhere and then upgrade other places. Now that brings me to my question for you, Sam. Is this the deal to open up space, or do you think they're going to do more deals?
I think they're going to do more deals. And the only reason why I say that, it was Tom Fitzgerald was pretty direct in his last press conference in front of reporters at the end of the season. He was very direct. Right now, I wouldn't say he's on the hot seat, but he's at that crossroad where he's got to elevate this team from making the playoffs to doing damage in the Stanley Cup playoffs, like getting to the third round. And you got to cut the fat from this team. And the next one on the list, which is improbable, it'd be interesting, is Palat. You'd have to throw his name in.
I disagree in the word improbable, but go ahead. Keep going.
Well, the reason why I say improbable is there's a lot of different things here, the amount of years. Now, he did get a front-loaded contract in terms of money.
Cash.
Yeah, cash up front, but the AAV stays consistent throughout the 5 years. So you're right, Nick. I will correct myself. You're right on that point. Do you know anything about his protection? Does he have a no-trade clause?
It becomes, I believe it becomes limited on July 1st. Let me double check. I think it's a 10 team on July 1st. But now you're talking semantics. Like, are you really going to block a trade and then we're just going to do it in a week kind of thing?
Yeah. So the point I'm trying to make is I think he's the next one on the block. That's my opinion. Because $6 million is a lot of money to be hogging. But if you're going to, quote, unquote, get Quinn Hughes, the first step is you got to lock Luke. That's what I say. Lock him up to a cap-friendly deal. No pun intended. Very similar.
It doesn't even have to be a cap-friendly deal, but keep going. Sorry. I keep cutting you off. I apologize.
Well, you're not going to pay Luke Hughes $14.5 million per year.
No, but if you go up to 9, I think it's fine.
I consider that cap friendly for somebody as potential, because you look at the value down the road, year 4, 5, 6, 7 of that contract. It's going to be a bargain. Just like Jack Hughes, if he wasn't getting hurt, that's a bargain in itself. It mitigates quite a bit of risk. So, I think. Again, I think there's just going to be some changes. I mean, look, Thomas Tatar, again, I know this is little. He's playing somewhere else. He's playing in Switzerland right now. So a lot of these guys are coming off the books.
Yeah, I mean, Lazar's coming off the books. Bastian's coming off the books. Dowling's coming off the books. And Christy Flannery from the Hockey News reports that Dowling's done. It sounds like his agent is preparing for agency. It sounds like Dowling's, is short, but, it sounds like his time with the Devils is over. And again, like, they spoke in, like, agent terms, like, we expect to hit market. And that usually means that the Devils aren't interested. And honestly, like, I think a lot of people would celebrate Tom Fitzgerald because that's, Tom Fitzgerald, I wrote an article yesterday. And you ever write something and then you're like, I really like what I wrote. I really like this one line that I wrote.
Okay.
I wrote that Tom Fitzgerald wants to win negotiations and Bill Zito wants to win hockey games. Bill Zito does not care about losing a trade if it leads to, like, he doesn't care what happens to the guy once he's no longer there. He doesn't care. Like, you don't matter to me anymore. You don't exist to me. Whatever. He doesn't care about trading within division, doesn't care about all these egotistical things that I think Tom Fitzgerald cares about, or he did. I think he did. I think Tom Fitzgerald didn't want to trade assets that made him look bad. I think you saw a little bit of a turn there with the Alexander Holtz trade, because that he clearly lost. Like, you don't want Paul Cotter with the 7th overall pick. But he made the deal, and took the L. But you saw during the season, like, when the prices were exorbitant, he just was like, I can't pay these. And I get it. I think I'd be the same way. But Bill Zito's not like that. And Bill Zito's winning back-to-back championships and has been to 3 straight finals. He took a 115-point player and a number 1B defenseman traded them for and a first-round pick, and traded it for Matthew Tkachuk. Like just traded and again, a lot of people, including myself, saw some flaws in that season from Huberdeau, and I wouldn't have wanted to pay him the contract that he got. But it's easy to say that now. Weegar was the one that I thought hurt more. I thought Weegar was a really good defenseman, and I still think he is. But he made that move for Tkachuk. He made the move. Like we forget this. He traded for Sam Bennett and Sam Reinhart within 4 months of each other. And Bennett was a guy that was kind of floundering in Calgary. He was all right, but he didn't look like this. I think he was a 6th overall pick. Didn't look like that guy. They traded a 2nd-round pick and a prospect named Emil something, but he didn't really turn into anything. So that was a bold, rightful move to get a guy with talent. And then when Reinhardt became available, he sent the best price. He sent the 1st-round pick in Devin Levi to Buffalo. Everybody thought Levi was the next thing, but I think they already had Knight at the time, so they didn't really need Levi. They just signed. They already had Bobrovsky signed to that $10 million per year contract, and he makes the big move. Everybody thought Seth Jones was cooked, including myself. I thought Jones was cooked. Jones finally looks a little better this season, and then he sends the big price, including Spencer Knight, to Chicago to get Jones with retention, which is important there because now they could spend their money. There's talks that they could bring back Ekblad, Marchand, and Bennett. And those are all guys that are going in the $6 to $10 million range. And they could bring back all three. What'd you say?
That's crazy. If you can bring
right, but they have the space because they've made the right moves. And I do think up until now, Fitzgerald has moved around to win negotiations. Whether that's contract negotiations, think about it. He probably could have got Johnny Gaudreau to sign here. Rest in peace. But Johnny Gaudreau is smaller, and there's an issue there. But imagine Johnny Gaudreau in this top 6. Instead of Palat, because that was the choice back then. But he didn't want to go to the number that Gaudreau needed to sign with the Devils, whether that's because of the hospital in Columbus or whether that's because, where his wife wanted to work or whether that's because he's a Flyers fan growing up, whatever the case may be. He could have gotten Gaudreau if he just spent the money. But I think that he's just had this mindset to win every negotiation. And he's won a lot of them. But that sometimes means you have to walk away. And walking away means you don't get the player. And not getting the player means that you didn't get the talent you wanted. And, sometimes it's smart. I don't think you should have spent Simone Nemec, Dawson Mercer, and a 1st-round pick for Ryan O'Reilly. I think it's terrible asset management. But at the same time, you're doing this all the time. I think that he held on to Dawson Mercer and didn't get Connor Hellebuck. And Connor Hellebuck just won MVP of the league. So, there's...
Which I have a little bit of a beef with.
That he won MVP?
No, not so much he won the MVP. But in 2007, there was this big debate about Marty Brodeur winning the Vezina and the Hart Trophy in the same season. And the press, the writers, the debate went on that no, goalies have their own MVP. Yeah, that's the Vezina. They can't win both. And at the time, I'm like, that's hogwash. If you dominate and you change the outcome of the season and the game, night in and night out, any player should be up for the Hart Trophy. Now, I'm glad that Connor Hellebuck won the Hart Trophy and the Vezina because, I think Jose Theodore back in 2002 won it, and
Carey Price won one.
And Carey Price, yeah. So
it was 2010.
But again, I think a lot of it. I think a lot of it was the Professional Hockey Writers Association. The way the mindset of that group. It's okay. I think they just for whatever reason they didn't like Lou and they took it out on Brodeur. And I'm glad that it's happening. It's happened a couple times since 2007 that a goalie would win both, and I had a big problem with it back then. And hearing that Hellebuck won both trophies,
Yeah.
I'm glad that these voters have, let's just say, evolved.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I don't think there was any other guy that like clearly won it, right? Like they were talking about Kucherov, but like Tampa Bay that impressive this year? I don't think so. Like obviously, like McDavid's always in the conversation, but this wasn't like wasn't McDavid hurt for part of the year?
Yeah, I mean, any bad year for McDavid is probably like top 10 in the league.
Sure.
So.
But yeah, no, I'm glad that Hellebuck won it. I think it was the right move. He's the reason that they win the President's Trophy? They did, right? They were, yeah. He's the reason. Like he had such a great season.
All he needed to win.
He could have been a Devil.
I'll tell you what. He looks evil. If you look at Hellebuck,
a little bit, yeah.
It almost looks like he would have horns on his head.
He looks like the guy. Did you ever watch the Hunger Games movies?
I don't watch movies.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
He kind of looks like the Game Maker in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
People out there will know what I'm talking about. I think he looks like the Game Maker. Hold on, let me see if I can find a picture.
Well, yeah, I mean, he looks evil. I just wish he won that one Four Nations game that I went to with Mrs. Wu in Boston. That beautiful February night. Actually, the other day, I was actually, wow.
See? Right?
Totally looks like that guy. And with the last name Hellebuck, how can he not be a New Jersey Devil? But we thought about that with Miroslav Shatan, years ago. Or maybe Paul Ranger playing on the Rangers. Like, how come it didn't happen?
Apparently, didn't Lou want Satan and Satan didn't want to come or something? Is that what Satan said?
You know what? I'll have to go back in time. Yeah. I mean,
I
probably heard that on the message board somewhere back in those days.
One of the things that's interesting about this, like a lot of people talk about the players that are on the Panthers now. Thomas Nosek, Jesper Boquist, Vitek Vanacek, Dmitry Kulikov, all former Devils. But they all have played a very small role. Like Kulikov probably plays the biggest role, and it's not that big. The guy who had the former Devil who had the most impact on this team is Sonny Mehta. So Sonny Mehta was hired. I believe he was hired by Lou Lamoriello, but he's one of the foremost analytics experts. He helps.
Is that the poker
put
player?
Together. I think so. Yeah.
Edmonton. Okay.
Yeah. But he's like he's. I think he's Bill Zito's right-hand man, and going to be a GM sooner rather than later. But it's one of those things. It's like, can you call it a fumble if these guys get hired in different organizations all the time to better roles? So I don't want to say that they fumbled the bag, but it is interesting that this guy who's just a savant at building rosters now, or at least part of the front office that does it the best way, he just lifted a cup after leaving New Jersey. So I just thought that's kind of an interesting point with Sonny Mehta. But yeah, go to puckspitchworks.com. I wrote, I think there are 3 lessons to be learned from the Panthers. I also think there's one lesson that you should not learn. I don't think the Devils should go after gritty players. That's not what the Panthers did. Sam Bennett wasn't a gritty player when he got signed, when he got traded. He was a top talent. Sam Reinhart wasn't a gritty player when he got signed. He was a top scorer. The Devils need to get scorers and teach them Sheldon Keefe's system. Sheldon Keefe has a pretty good system, similar to Paul Maurice's, with the ideal forechecking. When the Devils were rolling in November and December, they were forechecking like mad, causing a ton of turnovers in your face, really not letting you breathe. Do you remember, like, what was it, like 7 or 8 games in a row that they allowed less than 20 shots?
Yeah.
in December. That's the style they need to play all season. Well, honestly, it doesn't even matter during the season. That's just the style they need to
I
play the
think you're
postseason.
right. I think you're right, Nick, because they played that style, and for whatever reason, after Christmas, they beat the Rangers on the 23rd on that matinee game on a Monday, which still pisses me off because of ESPN. But on the 27th, I believe, or 28th, on the road in Carolina, when Marty Necas, when he was on the team, was doing some bad acting.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, the Devils just lost that edge, that grit.
Which doesn't make any sense because they beat Carolina the night before.
Yeah.
Something changed overnight, and then they just never got I don't know what happened. It's the mystery of the century. I have no idea how it happened or why it happened or what happened. They just forgot how to play hockey.
I don't understand it.
I do blame Keith for not getting them out of that rut. That's the one thing where I was like, Keith, you got it. He did a good job of sticking with what worked in the first half of the season, and he did change it once it stopped working. But what he was doing, it just never stuck. The offense just stayed in the mud, and then the injuries started piling up, and nobody was consistent. Meyer would finally get going, and then Nico would go on a little bit of a cold streak. Or, Hughes was hurt, but Hughes would go on a small cold streak when Bratt was at his best. It was on the same lines. They just couldn't get Palat would score 3 goals in 5 nights, but it would be the 5 nights that Jack Hughes scored 2 goals total. Or 2 goals in 5 games. It was tough getting everybody on the same rhythm. And when you finally got secondary scoring, then the top lines would dry up. Dawson Mercer would score a goal, but then, Dawson Mercer and Paul Cotter would put something in the back of the net, but then you wouldn't get anything from Nico or Brad or Meyer. So it was getting an offensive consistency is the most important thing for this team. And of course, I think that going after players is the most important part, and trading Haula is important because, my ideal offseason, I'm going to write about this. My ideal offseason, and I'm not asking a lot. When I say ideal, I'm trying to be realistic. Of course, I'd love for them to trade for McDavid and Jason Robertson and all these other, whatever, make it all work. My ideal offseason, trade for Jared McCann of the Seattle Kraken. Sign Christian Dvorak to play on that fourth line, whether you have him play center or you have him play wing with Juho Lakimo. What's the new guy's name? Lanico? I think it's Lamico. Juho Lamico.
What, that second rounder?
No, the guy we just signed from Finland. Or Switzerland. We just signed a guy, $800,000, one-way deal. Used to play for the Canucks. It was really good on the Canucks. Really good for a fourth liner. He was a really good fourth liner for the Canucks. But I want Christian Dvorak to be the other guy. And then I want them to I said this the other night. I can't remember who the other person I want was. There's another center that I want. I want to really take centers. I want centers because they have no depth at center. And I think that you're going to look really bad at the end of the season if you saw it. It's bad to not have centers. And I said get a guy like Rutger McGroarty or the Kings' Alex Lafreniere. I think the Kings' Alex Lafreniere has a lot of really good metrics that show that he's on the precipice of a decent breakout. I'm not talking about anything huge, but 15 to 20 goals. I think that this kid, he's generating a lot of offense on his own, and it's just not finishing. So he just needs somebody to help him get over the top. So basically, get a really good prospect, or you get a former really good prospect who just hasn't done the NHL. get a really good center wing hybrid. So if you don't get McCann, like I'd love Paterka, I'd love Brian Rust. If Barrett Hayton is available in Utah, I'd say go after him. One of those guys, and then I'd say get either a McGroarty, a Lafreniere, like one of those guys who's like a high pedigree prospect who hasn't done in the NHL yet, and then get a guy like Christian Dvorak who can be, he's basically going to replace Erik Haula, but play in a fourth line role. Like the line you really wanted a guy like Erik Haula to play.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be like my ideal offseason, just those 3 signings. And then, because I think you're good on defense. And I would do something like sign Kaapo Kähkönen to be a third goalie. Kähkönen is another Devils player in the Florida organization, but he got stuck. His AHL team's too good, so he didn't get to be the third goalie. The Checkers they were in the Calder Cup final.
Wow.
This fell on me, so I gotta move that.
Well, it's copycat league, no pun intended. I mean, the Florida Panthers are that team, and look, when they traded for Matthew Tkachuk, it changed the whole attitude.
It did.
Of the franchise.
It did.
It's amazing.
And hiring Paul Maurice, they went hand in hand, right? That happened at the same time.
Yeah.
So those 2 things definitely were like the catalyst from changing them from a team that could do really good in the regular season to a team that could win a Stanley Cup.
Can I ask you something, Nick?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the Devils are really going to make a move for Quinn Hughes? I like joking. I like joking around talking about it. Do you
This
really
offseason, no. I thought it was there, but I think cooler heads have prevailed. Like Fitzgerald would have had to call them like 3 weeks ago and paid an exorbitant price. They would have had to pay market for Quinn Hughes. And I think Tom Fitzgerald sees what we all see, that he's 2 years away from free agency, and there's a good likelihood that we could sign him for whatever price he's just going to tell us what the price is going to be. We're going to sign him without sending assets. But if they called them and they offered what Nashville asked for Ryan O'Reilly, which is Mercer, Nemitz, and a first, I think Rutherford might just be like, all right. Especially with how Nemitz played in the playoffs, I think Nemitz would be a really big piece for them to get. I think Mercer's going to break out, whether he's on the Devils or not. I think he's going to break out next year to the point of, like, I think he's going to be a 20-goal scorer again, 25 goals. I guess I'm not breaking out. I think he could be like a 60-point guy. I think he can be really good. And then I think you're looking at the whole landscape of the Devils. Like, again, I like the defense. I wanted to touch on the Palat part, though. Mm-hmm. Palat's got a market. A decent market, too.
So what market are you thinking?
I think you could get a similar price that the Ducks got for Dumoulin. A second-round pick and a mid-tier prospect. Mm-hmm. And I know it's different because that was a deadline deal and this is during the offseason, but Palat's got term, and I think that's people are going to, unlike with Haula, Palat, I don't think is a risk to a lot of people. I think people like Palat's game. And I think that with the cap going up at the precipice that it is, I think that a team like Detroit would really like him. Like Steve Yzerman would love to have him back. I think Tampa would. I'd say these are the obvious ones, but like I think Tampa would at least consider it. I want to discount the Ducks because they just traded for Kreider. They have the money to do it, but I don't think that's the type of move that they would make. You look at like Chicago, who's a team that wants that veteran presence that's going to try to hit the cap floor. I think that Chicago is going to be like near the top of his no trade list. Mm. But Toronto's a team that I think would be interested in him. Winnipeg is a team I think would be interested in him. Boston is a team that I think would be really interested in him. Columbus is a team that I think would be really interested in him. Like I think he's going to have a market, and I think a team would give up a second-round pick and a prospect, like their seventh to 10th best prospect, which is what Herman Traff was to us. I think they're going to take on the full contract and be fine with it. He's 2 years left, right? 2 years left at $6 million.
Yep.
And I think that plot's going to have a market. We're about out of time, Sam, but I don't want to leave before I ask you this. Do you think they're taking calls on Dougie?
I think they're taking calls on anybody.
Do you think they're making calls on Dougie?
Making. I do believe, this is my opinion, I do believe that they are kicking the tires, so to speak, with Dougie. Just based on Fitzgerald's mindset during that last presser.
What do you think he's worth? Can you get a first-round pick for Dougie Hamilton?
To a desperate team, you might be able to, but it's not going to be. It's going to be one of those teams that it's going to be 20 through 30. So,
and if that's the case, you might have to take a contract back.
Yeah, I mean,
I wonder if.
Do you want to trade Dougie Hamilton?
No, I think this is not the right year to trade Dougie. I also think this is not the right year to have a ton of cap space.
But I also think that I believe Dougie Hamilton had what Palat had with his deal, cash up front. Am I correct on that?
He had cash in the middle.
Cash in the middle? Okay.
But I think a lot of it has been paid out. He was getting paid it was 22-23. I wrote an article about how everybody, the Devils, I think it was like an $80 million or $81 million salary cap that year. The Devils were paying $96 million in cash. So there was a lot of guys that 22-23 season. The Devils needed all of the playoff revenue that they got that year because they were paying.
They needed the tax deductions as well.
Yeah, they were getting hammered. I'm trying to see his. Yeah, so this year's a big one, and then it's done. So he's getting a $10.55 million signing bonus. Last year, he had a $10 million base pay and a $2.6 million. So that's the interesting thing. If the Devils trade him late, he has a $10.5 million signing bonus and a $1 million salary. So if the Devils pay that signing bonus and then trade his salary elsewhere, a team's going to get a $9 million cap hit, but a $1 million salary. And then next year, it's a $7.4 million signing bonus and a $1 million base pay. And the year after that, it's a $5 million base pay. So you're really looking at a lot of this money has been paid. Because last year it was $12.6 million. The year before it was $12.6 million. So, yeah, it's all in the middle. I wrote that article last year. 23-24 is where they paid like $93 million. They did not get the playoff revenue that year. I think you're right. I think they're at least asking what he's worth.
Yeah. There is nothing wrong of getting a valuation of one of your players on the open trade market. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as it doesn't get leaked to the press.
Right. Right. Yeah, you don't want a guy to feel that.
At the same time.
Yeah, and you don't want Tom Fitzgerald he's done a lot of good work rebuilding the reputation of the Devils and having us be a destination for free agents that they'll at least consider. You don't want to ruin that. I think the Rangers are going to strike out in free agency just because of how they've treated their players. And you don't want to get into a position like that.
Yeah.
Because at least the Rangers have the gravitas of being in New York and playing Madison Square Garden. You don't have that. But I think the Devils have a lot going for them. I know a lot of people are so down. I get it. I think this team... Do I think this team is a contender today? No. Do I think this team... How many... I wanted the Devils to add 5 forwards. They've added 2. They've subtracted 1. But I kind of built that in. So they've added 2. They added Juho, and then they added Gritsik. Those were kind of the 2 easiest ones. I need them to add 3 more difference makers. And that's assuming that Haminaho starts in the AHL. But I need a top 6 player, so a McCann, a Rust, a Peterka. I need a third line center, a good center. One who could win faceoffs, one who could play defensive matchups, one who could really play well. And you got to get that guy at $3 million. So that's the hard part. And then you got to get a good fourth liner. That's why I think Dvorak would be really good. He really bounced back with Montreal this year after just being a devastatingly bad trade for them. But there's a lot of really interesting players there.
Definitely. And
I don't want a ton of cap space this year because I don't like free agency. Outside of Marner, I think it's poison pill after poison pill. And even Marner is he's a little bit of poison pill.
I don't want Marner. Are you kidding me? No.
No, not at $14 million.
Marner, I don't know. I think he's going to be the next Taylor Hall.
Maybe. Taylor Hall just played in the Eastern Conference Final, though.
Yeah,
Marner's never done that.
Yeah, but put Marner on the Carolina Hurricanes with Rod Brindamore.
You might be doing that. That might be exactly what happens.
Yeah.
But I don't want to spend $10 million on Sam Bennett. I don't want to spend. Actually, before we leave, this is the last thing I'll say. What's the highest you'd go per year on Brad Marchand? Because I know you like him.
I'd give him what he wants.
You'd give him 10?
I would. If we just spent this whole podcast talking about Tom Fitzgerald going bold, that's going bold, and I think he's worth every penny. Because he's going to make
37?
everybody better. He's going to have that impact, that emotional impact on the team. That's a leader right there. That's the guy we all wanted in Palat.
It all depends on how injured Kovacevic and Hughes are. But if you traded Dougie and just turned that money into Marchand, I'd really like it for now. If you could get him at 3 and 27, you pay him $9 million a year.
I'll tell you the Marchand effect. Okay, this past season, Boston Bruins. When he was on the Boston Bruins and he played on the Four Nations team for Team Canada, he was a leader. He was definitely a leader in that locker room. Canada wins that tournament. he gets traded. The Florida Panthers, back-to-back appearances in the Stanley Cup Finals. They're exhausted, Nick, the amount of games that they played. They're injured. But as soon as you injected Marchand in that lineup, in that organization. Now, when he first came there, I think he was hurt, wasn't he? He didn't play right away.
Right, yeah, he got traded when he was on the IR.
Yeah. But as soon as he got going, I truly believe he even got Matthew Tkachuk going. We heard all the injuries that he played with. But I'm telling you, there are certain special players in all sports where, even in football, you can have this one player that may not show up on the stat sheet, whatever, but even the kicker kicks better for whatever reason because of that player. And I think Marchand is one of those players.
I'll tell a quick story about just how mindset changes. I think this was the year that Cleveland won the title in basketball. I'm trying to make sure that the dots are connected, or maybe they went to the title, whatever. Cleveland was floundering. And then they traded for, I think it was Timothy Mozgov. And Mozgov wasn't the best player in the world, but it was adding that trust from the front office and the impact that had on the locker room. And that took them all the way to the NBA Finals. And Brad Marchand would scare the living daylights out of me as a player, just as a contract. But at the same time, it would scare me because of the injuries. Is he going to is his body going to break down soon? Is he trying to cash out because he's worried? He feels it. He feels that his body's breaking down. And that would be my concern. Is he going to get a major groin injury like Palat and never look the same? Is he going to get a shoulder injury and just lose his shot? That would be my concern.
That's my concern with every player in this league, to be honest.
I know, but he's been injured. He gets a hip surgery every year.
Well,
it's.
I mean, that's
my concern.
Fitzgerald's job to find a Butch Goring.
But that's a bold move that I think would move the needle. I do think that's a needle move. I think Brad Marchand. I'm going to sound crazy when I say this, but I think Brad Marchand moves more needles than Sam Bennett.
I would agree with you. Sam Bennett is a great player, but he's going to get big money. Big money. And then you have to weigh in, the analytics, whatever, but the captologists will go crazy over it.
The last thing I'll say to everybody, look at how Florida scored. Look at how Florida scored in that Stanley Cup final. They didn't score a lot of dirty goals. They scored a lot of skillful goals. And maybe that rough and tumble nature opened up space for them to take the shot. I think that's repeatable by the roster you have with the Devils. The only guy I'll listen to about, I think Jack Hughes is a hard-nosed player. I think he does play like that. I think he plays very similar to Marchand. He's just much, much, much smaller as far as frame. He's much more slender. Jack Hughes put on 20 pounds of muscle, which he can. He's out of the sling, so he can lift and he can work out. I think he can play a Brad Marchand style. That Brad Marchand is a special being, but I think he can play that kind of style. I'm probably overstating it a little bit. I think he can play a style where he's fearless. Where he'll skate between hits because he trusts his talent. Yeah, but the one I'll listen to is Brat. I was a little concerned. Every year I'm kind of it's fine. I get it. It's a lot of luck in the playoffs. A lot of this year I was this is now kind of a trend where he hasn't really shown up to that next level. Not saying I want to trade Bratt. I don't want to. I think that he's an important cog in your team, and he drives a lot the regular season. You have to figure out why it's not working in the postseason. And if he needs to change, like, I think it's because he's tentative and would rather pass than shoot. I think you just need to change his mentality this season and just be like, make the play that makes the most sense. Don't be unselfish if unselfish is not the right move. And sometimes like he had 80 hits, right? Or he had 90 hits. He had just under 100 hits this year. So he's hitting people. But you got to, like, in the playoffs, you have to come to play. And I know he had the shoulder injury, but he has to come to play. So that's the guy lists to. Nico was great in the playoffs. Timo was great in the playoffs. I think you got pieces. And I think this defense can win in the playoffs. And I think Jacob Markstrom can win in the playoffs. This Devils team is built right. It's just missing pieces. If you get a McCann, if you get a Dvorak, if you hit on the risk. And that's the thing. Panthers hit on the risks. The Devils have to hit on their risks. Whether it's McGroarty, whether that's DJ Paterka, it's you gotta hit on the risks. Vegas took a chance on Holtz. They thought that could be a guy that turns into Sam Bennett, right? Mm-hmm. Didn't work out for them, but those are the types of guy you got to go after, like a Holtz type. It's crazy as it sounds to like sign up for that again. I think those are the types you got to go after. There's a couple other, one other thing that I think is an interesting thing to talk about, Sam. Before we go, I know we got like 1 minute left, but I advocated for the Devils to offer sheet Will Cooley from the Rangers.
You said that on the last podcast, I believe.
Oh, I did? Okay, I wrote that before. Okay. Oh, I think I wrote it after I said it. The other guy that I think they should consider offer sheet, these are only two I would even consider. Simon Holmstrom from the Islanders. I think he's another guy that hasn't hit his ceiling yet. It's kind of pretty far away from his ceiling. And you could get him for like a first and a third in the offer sheet and sign him for 5 years. And really, like, he looks – I think he's a guy who could be a 30-goal scorer. I think both of them, Cooley and Holmstrom, I think could both be 30-goal scorers in the right situation. Put them next to Jack Hughes next year, and they'll explode.
And there you have it. From Nick Villano at pucksandpitchforks.com. So what are you plugging?
So I'm going to write about Holmstrom tonight or tomorrow. I got to see what's on the docket. Jenny Streeter's writing a story about Erik Haula and just his impact on the Devils. That's coming out tonight. John Bailey already wrote about Haula. He just wrote about the trade as a news piece. It's up in pucksandpitchforks.com. He also wrote about kind of that dichotomy of Alexander Holtz and Anton Lundell and kind of the mistake that the 2020 draft ended up being. I wrote a bunch of stuff. I wrote about Luke Hughes and the mistake the Devils can't make. I already said that I wrote about the 3 things the Devils need to learn from the Panthers. Really interesting stuff, but just digging into like the data. I'm going to write about 5 trade targets that I think the Devils should make. I'm going to write about free agency is going to be nonsense. We're going to write a bunch of draft stuff. Oh, Jersey Joe just put out his mock drafts. Go check that out. He picked every Devils pick. See what he's picked out. I wrote, yeah. So there's going to be articles every single day, multiple articles every single day. Like, I'm going to try to get like at least 3 articles a day for you people for the rest of the month through free agency.
PucksandPitchforks.com. Yeah, we'll have it covered. Draft, free agent frenzy. It's my favorite time of the year, actually.
We love it.
Yes.
Take it in.
All right. Well, want to thank all those tuning in. Seeing a lot of familiar faces like Matt Freudenberger.
We love those faces.
Ted, Steve Engel, Max, Andrew Harvey. Lots of people. All right, gonna get out of here.
Who's David Becker?
Oh yeah,
tell him to get.
Yeah, David Decker of Town Toyota, Route 46 in beautiful Ledgewood, New Jersey. Go to David Decker and tell him Sam and Nick sent you. Till next time, let's go Devils.